Picture the rugged, unforgiving coastline of Maine. You've got these massive crashing waves, jagged rocks, and standing tall against literally all of it, the Blackwood Lighthouse. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack a truly fascinating piece of history that was buried for nearly 7 decades. And, this isn't just some story about an old, rotting structure left to the elements since 1954. It's actually an incredible look at how local myths are born, how history gets totally distorted, and what happens when someone finally decides to look past the rumors. Let's set the scene here. Blackwood Lighthouse was completely abandoned, just left to decay against the ocean's fury. And for generations, everyone, and I mean everyone in the surrounding area, believed they knew exactly why.
Right, so for 70 long years, the locals fully believed that this crumbling structure was haunted by a phantom. Now, 7 decades is a really long time for a rumor to steep, isn't it? It stops being a campfire story and basically becomes accepted historical fact. Like, if you grew up nearby, you were explicitly told to stay away from Blackwood. The story went that the final lighthouse keeper had simply lost his mind, abandoned his post, and left this dark, lingering presence behind. The haunting of Blackwood Lighthouse was practically gospel. But, as we're about to see, the real truth buried inside those damp, rotting walls was far more shocking and, honestly, far more human than any ghost story.
Section 1. Into the Darkness.
Okay, let's fast forward to the summer of 2023. This urban explorer named Mark decided he was going to investigate this 70-year-old myth head-on. Now, I really want you to imagine the intense suspense of this environment. Armed with literally just a flashlight, he pushes open these massive, rusted iron doors that haven't moved in decades. The air inside is just incredibly heavy, with old sea salt and deep decay. From there, he begins this long, tense climb up the winding spiral staircase, the wind howling against the glass outside like a warning, until he finally reaches the top lantern room.
Section 2. The Hidden Compartment. So when Mark reached that top room, he fully expected to find, 1950s dust and shattered glass. But instead, right there on the ground, his flashlight caught something weird. A section of wooden floorboards that actually seemed newly disturbed. Driven by sheer curiosity, Mark got right down and began prying at the loose wood. And beneath those floorboards, he didn't find dirt or structural beams. No way. He revealed a completely hidden, deliberately concealed steel compartment.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what was actually inside that steel box. It wasn't just random junk. Mark pulled out a waterproof leather bag, specifically designed to survive harsh maritime conditions. Inside that bag were 3 vintage diaries entirely filled with handwritten entries, right alongside a stack of carefully preserved, unsent letters dated 1954, which, remember, is the exact year the lighthouse was abandoned. And all of these documents, they were written by one man, Thomas, the final keeper of Blackwood Lighthouse.
Section 3. Thomas's Final Letters.
At this point, Mark wasn't just exploring an empty building anymore, was he? He was literally holding a time capsule from the man at the dead center of the town's darkest legend. As he read through the faded ink of Thomas's diaries, it brings us to the absolutely crucial question of this entire explainer. What really happened in 1954? Reading Thomas's own words, Mark realized the town had it entirely wrong. Thomas wasn't crazy. He absolutely did not abandon his duty. The whole myth was a complete fabrication covering up something far more sinister. Here is the shocking reality. According to his own diaries, Thomas had made a massive, incredibly dangerous discovery. He had stumbled upon an underground cave network located directly beneath the lighthouse itself. And get this, these caves weren't empty. They were actively being used by a ruthless ring of World War II smugglers. An illegal high-stakes smuggling operation had been taking place, quite literally, right under the lighthouse keeper's feet, utilizing that jagged coastline to move illicit goods completely undetected. Now, Thomas was a man of strict duty. When he discovered this massive criminal enterprise, he didn't just look the other way. He actually threatened to report the smugglers. But these were really dangerous men, so instead of fleeing, they turned on him. So the crucial point is exactly what Thomas himself wrote. When Thomas threatened to report them, they trapped him. He was locked inside his own lighthouse, completely cut off from the outside world by the very criminals he had tried to stop.
Section 4. The Forgotten Hero.
Let's map this out to see how the whole thing built across history. First off, during World War II, smugglers established their secret network down in the caves. Then, in 1954, Thomas discovers them and gets trapped. Knowing he wasn't going to make it out, he used his fading strength to compile those diaries, write the letters, and build that hidden steel compartment, just hoping someone would eventually find it. From 1954 all the way to 2023, the lighthouse sits totally abandoned, and a completely false ghost rumor spreads like wildfire. And this brilliantly illustrates how a cover-up spanning nearly 3/4 of a century finally saw the light of day when Mark climbed those stairs in 2023.
Let's actually look at these two realities side by side. On side A, you've got the local legend, right? A crazy man who abandoned his post, leaving behind a phantom that terrified locals for 70 years. But then on side B, we have the real story. A man of incredible integrity who was trapped by violent smugglers. A guy who refused to let their crimes go undocumented and who ultimately died a hero, hiding the evidence for the future. And I'm so happy to tell you that Mark didn't just leave those diaries sitting in the dark. He brought the bags straight to the local authorities, and they were finally able to clear Thomas's name. The ghost of Blackwood Lighthouse was never a phantom at all. It was simply a forgotten hero, patiently waiting for his truth to be heard.
So, this leaves us with a pretty profound thought to wrap up today's explainer. When we look at the myths and ghost stories in our own towns, we really have to ask ourselves, what other local legends are hiding real heroes? How much actual historical truth is buried beneath a convenient rumor, just waiting for someone curious enough to pry up the floorboards? Keep questioning the stories you hear, because as Thomas proved, the truth is often far, far more incredible than the myth. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep your eyes open for the mysteries hidden in plain sight.